Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at Crowdstrike.
A cybersecurity company.
Exactly, a cybersecurity company, and specifically we are diving deep into their Q3 2024 quarterly report.
Their Form 10Q.
Yes, their Form 10Q. It's really a fascinating document. Gives you a look behind the curtain
Yeah, definitely.
at how a company like Crowdstrike, well, first of all, how they're doing and their future plans and even the risks they're facing.
They're required to list those.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. It's like they have to tell you everything that could go wrong.
Right.
Um, as I was reading through this report, a couple of things jumped out at me. One is this thing they call the July 19th incident.
Ah,
As mysterious, right?
it does.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But also, their revenue growth has been really impressive.
Yeah, it's significant.
And they just issued a bunch of senior notes. Now, I'm not a financial expert,
Right.
but that's a lot of money.
It is. It is.
$738 million to be exact. So it makes you wonder what they're planning.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of change.
So why don't we start by just painting a picture of their overall financial health right now?
Sure. Well, for starters, they just achieved profitability this fiscal year, which is a big milestone for any company, especially one in a fast-growing sector like cybersecurity.
Yeah, especially after having some losses previously.
Exactly. So that's a positive sign. Their revenue is up 31% year over year.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And 95% of that revenue comes from subscriptions, which is a good thing. It provides a nice stable income stream.
It's like their financial bedrock.
Exactly. Now, of course, they have expenses, like any company. Their biggest expenses are employee-related costs, cloud hosting, and stock-based compensation, which makes sense given their focus on R&D, research and development.
Yeah, they're investing in their future.
Exactly.
And speaking of investments, one thing that caught my eye was their stock structure. They have this dual-class system where Class B shareholders have 10 votes per share.
Right.
I'm curious what that means for the average investor.
Well, it does give those Class B shareholders more control over the company's direction. Typically, those are founders and early investors.
Those are the people who started it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can be a double-edged sword. It allows those with a long-term vision to steer the ship.
Right.
But it can also limit the voting power of everyday investors.
Okay, so something to keep in mind. So let's talk about this July 19th incident. It sounds kind of ominous.
Yeah.
What happened? And why should our listeners care?
Well, it wasn't exactly a spy thriller, but it did cause quite a stir in the cybersecurity world.
So not spies.
Not this time. What happened was an update to their Falcon sensor, which is a core part of their security software, caused system crashes for some Windows users.
Oh, wow. So their own software update caused problems?
Yes, unfortunately.
What kind of impact did that have on CrowdStrike?
Well, they got hit with multiple lawsuits, including class action lawsuits and securities litigation.
Oof.
Yeah, that's never good news for a company. And there were government inquiries and potential penalties.
So they got in trouble with the government too.
Potentially, yeah,
And I imagine this hurt their reputation.
definitely. All of this has been costly for them. The report says they spent over $39 million on incident-related expenses.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
It is. It just goes to show that even the most sophisticated tech companies can make mistakes.
Yeah, no system is perfect, right?
Right.
So given this setback and, all the inherent risks of operating in cybersecurity, how is CrowdStrike thinking about the challenges ahead?
Well, they're definitely aware of the risks. In the report, they list several key factors they see as potential problems.
What are some of those?
Well, for one, the competition is fierce. They're up against big, established tech companies as well as small, more nimble startups.
Right. It's a crowded market.
Exactly. And they also point out that cybersecurity is a constantly evolving field.
So they're always having to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
Right. The bad guys are always coming up with new ways to attack, so CrowdStrike has to constantly innovate to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like an arms race.
It is. And another risk is their reliance on third-party cloud providers like Amazon Web Services.
Right. They use AWS to host a lot of their stuff.
Right. And if something happened to AWS, it could have a ripple effect on CrowdStrike.
Makes sense. So they're not totally in control of their own destiny.
That's right.
And then there's the whole issue of data privacy and security compliance, which seems like a minefield these days.
It is. The rules are constantly changing, and they have to comply with regulations all over the world.
It's like a global patchwork of laws.
It is. And it's not just about following the rules, it's also about maintaining customer trust. People need to know that their data is safe with CrowdStrike.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And lastly, they mentioned the risks associated with their dependence on international markets,
Right, which is a big part of their growth strategy.
but also exposes them to geopolitical risks and economic uncertainty. So
Exactly.
they're trying to balance growth with stability. It's a delicate balancing act.
It is. Hashtag TTS, the deep dive episode 2024-1203, part 2 of 3.
So we've talked about the challenges CrowdStrike faces, with the lawsuits and the competition and the constant threat of cyber attacks. But at the same time, they seem pretty optimistic about the future. They're clearly not shying away from growth. And one area where they seem particularly excited is artificial intelligence, or AI as everyone calls it these days. I'm curious how AI is actually changing the game in cybersecurity.
It's a big deal. CrowdStrike is betting big on AI to take their threat detection and response to the next level.
So instead of just reacting to attacks, they're trying to predict them before they even happen. Is that even possible?
That's the idea. They're using AI to sift through mountains of data looking for patterns and anomalies that could signal an attack.
So it's like having a digital detective working 24/7.
Exactly. AI never sleeps.
How are they building this AI capability? Are they just hiring a bunch of data scientists?
Well, it's a combination of things. They have their own in-house AI experts, but they're also making strategic acquisitions. You know, those senior notes we talked about earlier.
The $738 million.
Right. Some of that money could be going towards buying companies with specialized AI knowledge. In fact, their recent acquisition of Bionic fits into this strategy.
Bionic. Yeah, I remember seeing that in a report, but I have to admit, I didn't really dig into it. What does Bionic do?
They focus on application security posture management, which basically means they help companies understand the vulnerabilities in their software applications.
So instead of just protecting the devices themselves, they're going deeper into the software running on those devices.
Exactly. CrowdStrike is creating a multi-layered defense system, and AI is a key part of that strategy.
Okay, I'm starting to see how AI could be a game changer. But let's get practical. What does this mean for businesses? Why should they care about CrowdStrike's AI push?
It's simple. Cyber attacks are getting more sophisticated, more frequent, and harder to detect. Traditional security measures just aren't enough anymore. AI gives companies a fighting chance against these advanced threats.
So it's like having an AI bodyguard protecting your business.
That's a good way to put it. AI can analyze threats, predict their behavior, and respond much faster than any human could.
That's reassuring. But let's be real. No security system is perfect. Even with AI, isn't there still a chance that something could slip through the cracks?
Of course. AI is a powerful tool, but it's not a magic bullet. And CrowdStrike knows that. They emphasize a holistic approach to cybersecurity.
So it's not just about AI.
Right. It's about integrating AI with other security measures. Things like threat intelligence, human expertise, strong security policies. It's about creating a layered defense system.
Right, AI is part of a larger team.
Exactly. It's like having a well-trained army with AI as the special forces unit.
Okay, that makes sense. AI provides the cutting-edge capabilities, but it needs the support of the entire security infrastructure. So we've talked about their AI push, but the report also highlights their international expansion plans. They're clearly aiming for global reach. What's driving that strategy?
Growth. They see huge potential in markets outside the U.S., especially in Europe, Asia-Pacific, and Latin America. These are regions with fast-growing economies and a growing need for cybersecurity solutions.
But I imagine that expanding globally comes with its own set of challenges, right? I mean, every country has its own laws, its own culture, its own way of doing business.
Definitely. They have to navigate a complex web of regulations and cultural differences. It's not just about translating their software into different languages. It's about adapting their entire approach to each specific market.
So they need to be sensitive to local nuances.
Exactly. They're building partnerships with local companies and hiring local talent. It's a blend of global vision and local execution.
And it seems to be working. Their international revenue has been growing steadily. It's impressive how they're balancing global expansion with their focus on cutting-edge technology like AI.
It is. They're operating at a high level. But it's not just about AI and international growth. They're also investing heavily in what they call their partner ecosystem.
Their partner ecosystem, what's that?
It's all about collaborating with other companies in the cybersecurity space. Managed security service providers, system integrators, tech companies. They're building an alliance to offer more comprehensive solutions.
Strength in numbers.
Right. It's a win-win for everyone involved. CrowdStrike gets to expand its reach and offer a wider range of services, and their partners get to benefit from their technology and expertise.
It's a smart strategy.
Mm.
But even with all this momentum, they're not immune to the challenges we discussed earlier. The cybersecurity landscape is constantly changing. What are some things that could disrupt their plans in the future?
Well, the biggest challenge is staying ahead of the curve. When it comes to emerging threats, cybercriminals are always coming up with new ways to attack. CrowdStrike has to be constantly innovating to keep up. It's a never-ending battle.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. And the IT environment is getting more complex. With cloud computing, mobile devices, the Internet of Things, all of that creates more opportunities for cybercriminals.
So CrowdStrike has to adapt to this expanding digital landscape.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of talent. The cybersecurity industry is facing a severe skills shortage. CrowdStrike needs to attract and retain the best and brightest to stay competitive.
It's tough to find good people these days.
It is. And then, of course, there's always the risk of unforeseen events. Things like major cyber attacks, new regulations, economic downturns. No company is completely immune to these external forces.
So CrowdStrike has a lot on its plate, but they've also shown that they can adapt and overcome challenges.
They're definitely a company to watch. They have a clear vision, a strong customer focus, and a commitment to innovation. It'll be interesting to see what they do next.
Hashtag TTS, the Deep Dive episode 2024-1203, part 3 of 3. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We looked at CrowdStrike's financials, their big bet on AI, their plans to go global, and even that July 19th incident. But now I want to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture. What does all this mean for CrowdStrike's future? And what should our listeners take away from this deep dive?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that CrowdStrike is operating in a really important and rapidly growing industry. Cybersecurity is not just a tech issue anymore. It's a top priority for companies of all sizes, all over the world.
It's not just about protecting data, it's about protecting entire businesses.
Exactly. And CrowdStrike is positioning themselves to be a leader in this space.
But as we've discussed, they face some serious challenges. The competition is fierce, the threat landscape is constantly evolving, and they need to attract and retain top talent. Can they really pull it off?
Well, they definitely have a few things going for them. First, their cloud-native platform gives them a lot of flexibility and scalability. They can adapt to new threats and deploy solutions much faster than traditional security providers.
So they were born in the cloud.
Yeah, pretty much. Second, their focus on AI could be a game changer. They're using AI not just to react to attacks, but to predict and prevent them.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. And third, their leadership team seems really strong. They have a clear vision and a deep understanding of the market.
So they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they seem to have a good handle on things.
Okay, so for those of you out there who might be thinking about investing in CrowdStrike, what are some things to keep in mind?
Well, it's important to understand that CrowdStrike is a growth stock. Their focus is on expanding their market share and growing their revenue, even if that means sacrificing short-term profits.
So they're playing the long game.
Exactly. And that means their stock price can be volatile. It's not for the risk averse.
So you need to have a strong stomach.
Yeah, you got to be able to handle the ups and downs. Also, the cybersecurity market is super competitive. CrowdStrike faces pressure from both big tech companies and smaller startups. So investors need to consider whether CrowdStrike can maintain its competitive edge.
It's a tough market.
It is. And of course, there's always the risk of unforeseen events, like a major cyber attack or a new regulation that could disrupt their business.
So there are no guarantees.
Right. But CrowdStrike has a strong track record, and they're clearly committed to security and risk management.
So they're doing what they can to mitigate the risks.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so to wrap things up, CrowdStrike is a company with a lot of potential, but there are also risks involved. Investors need to weigh those carefully before making any decisions.
I agree. It's a balancing act.
Well said. And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive. We give you the information you need to make informed decisions. We hope this deep dive into CrowdStrike has been helpful.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you.
Likewise, stay curious, stay informed, and thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.